So today, we're here to talk about mindset. What's the perspective we want all of our patients to look through when they're trying to figure out how to conquer fear? This is the part where we tell you guys that we're not gonna make it feel great before we do it. We're gonna learn how to do it scared.
Doing it scared is what it's all about. So welcome to episode 3, tips 6 and 7. Welcome back to Raising Resilience, 25 tips for parenting your child with anxiety or OCD. I'm Dr. Josh Spitalnick, practice owner of Anxiety Specialists of Atlanta. I'm a licensed psychologist, board certified in cognitive behavioral therapy. And I have with me my co-author and colleague, Marti Munford, licensed professional counselor. So let's start with tip number 6. I'm excited about this episode because this is really getting us and our mindset into your home and thinking about a different way to interface with when our brain says fight, flight, or freeze. What's tip 6?
So tip 6 is that we are going to be teaching your child to live with fear, not in fear.
What?
Yes. So this is a huge shift, right? So, and I tell parents in an intake, and honestly, I fully believe this. If there was a way that I as a parent could make it so my kid never has to do anything hard, I probably would do that.
Sure, of course.
I would do anything to keep my kid from stress. Knowing that that's not possible, the next best thing is going to be helping them feel really resilient when things get tough, right?
So the challenge with that in therapy for us is parents often come in asking for coping skills. And we're all about coping skills. Cope as much as you want. Journal, take a spa day, get your nails done, take a walk, listen to music, meditate, breathe, medicines. For some of us, maybe a beer or a glass of wine here and there. We get that. That brings us down. But when you teach a kid those kind of coping mechanisms, which are still helpful in certain points, you're also kind of teaching them that's the only way you can get through this scary moment. And the reality is, even if they didn't use those coping skills, we know they're going to get through that scary moment because of the passage of time.
Right.
So when you're working with an anxiety specialist, us, and we teach you to become an anxiety specialist, you guys, we're actually teaching you to sort of put some of those fidget toys and coping mechanisms to the side just for a moment and embrace fear head on. I know that sounds insane. It might sound terrifying to some of you parents out there, but the reality is facing fear head on, fear that's not dangerous, Marti.
Right.
Fear that doesn't violate someone's privacy or overall well-being. Fear is not the enemy.
And so this goes back to what we said in our very first video, which was that our goal is for people to have as many resources as possible without ever having to come to therapy. And so one way that we do that is by understanding fear as a concept instead of treating a specific symptom, right? So if I can teach your kid to not be afraid of dogs, great, that's helpful for you. But if I can teach your kid to know what to do when they're feeling scared, they can repurpose that again and again and again, because it might be a dog today, it might be sleepovers tomorrow, it might be asking someone on a date, it might be raising your hand in class, it might be driving a car, right? There's so many different ways that fear will show up in someone's life, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel each time.
So we're not here to completely disband or take away coping mechanisms, but we are here to teach you guys, moms and dads and parents out there, and you teaching your kids that facing fear head on, being okay with fear being there, thinking about fear in a different way actually is a skill.
Yeah, and that's true for you as a parent too, right? You'll notice a lot of that in these tips is that what we're wanting to work with our kids on is also what we as parents kind of need to work on, right? It's really hard these days not to parent in fear, but you have to parent with fear.
You're saying that with fear, that sounds so terrifying to so many of us, but we're not saying with fear that causes danger or with fear that puts your child at risk. It's with fear knowing that fear is normal, fear is expected in many situations, fear is actually a normal biological process in our brain. What you do with fear is what we're here to advocate.
Sure.
Maybe we change it. This is a great segue for us to tip number 7, which if you're selling me on the notion of live with fear, not in fear, we've got to be able to teach our kids and our parents as well the difference between things that are genuinely dangerous, which we're not messing around about, mom and dad, and things that feel dangerous here or here, but they actually don't pose a real threat.
Sure.
And years ago, I came up with this phrase, scary safe versus scary dangerous. I don't know if I coined it. I didn't read it anywhere, but it's a phrase I swear by now in therapy when I do it with kids, teens, even adults, which is your ability to differentiate between the smoke alarm when you're cooking bacon and the fire alarm goes off, not because of fire, but because of smoke,
Sure.
versus what a real fire alarm is. In the fire alarm metaphor, we hear a lot in anxiety work with kids. The brain has a sensitivity or a trigger or that fire alarm sensor. And when we're nervous and anxious, fire alarm goes off like that.
Sure.
When in fact, there's not real danger. So tip 7 is about teaching your children and maybe yourselves the difference between scary safe and scary dangerous. Marti, what does that mean in your clinical practice?
So for me, you mentioned the smoke alarm, right? I tell people, I'm not here to turn off the smoke alarm.
No.
It's not safe. I don't want to. And frankly, there's another problem with your kid if there's no fear, right?
That's the kid running into the bus. Kid running into the car. We
into
don't
the
want
bus,
that.
Running into
Ooh, look, tennis
dangerous
ball.
situations, on the skateboard,
Yes.
down the hill, all that stuff, right? We want fear. Fear helps us regulate and make good decisions, right? So my job is not to turn off the smoke alarm. My job is to recalibrate it because it should not be going off when we're not in danger.
So when we design interventions or ways to master skills through challenges, some people call them exposure therapy, some people call them just challenges. We know that we're asking you to do things that are fearful,
Yeah.
but not dangerous. And you're having to convey that to your kid, which is, I want you to go talk to that person, assuming you know who that person is, and you're putting them in a situation that conjures up that fear here biologically, here with that breathing and respiratory experience, but it's not designed to be danger. And if you do that and overcome it, going back a few episodes, corrective experience.
Right.
You've now recalibrated, I love that word you used, the smoke detector. Mm-hmm. You recalibrated that just because I feel fear doesn't mean I'm actually in danger.
And, safe also doesn't mean risk-free.
No.
Again, it goes back to, we're not trying to control outcomes. Parents will ask me that sometimes, are you gonna make sure this goes the way it should? In fact, a lot of times I'm gonna make sure it goes the way it shouldn't, right? Because this is all about being able to cope with uncertainty, right? And so if we're talking about, presenting in class, right? Standing up in front of a bunch of middle schoolers is not risk-free.
No.
It's just not. And as a clinician, I can't make sure that all those kids do the right thing, right? And so our goal here is, how do I cope with risk, live with fear, right? And walk into this moment that is very scary, but not dangerous.
You're getting me right here because I have a kid who's now of driving age. And to think about putting her in the situations that I hope are the safest, but the calculated risks of her being out there, whether she's, in a car with people she shouldn't be in with, or worse, we're all afraid of, the drunk driver, the other one that's not paying attention. The reality is I've got to find in my own terrifying comfort with my wife and I, the encouragement and confidence for my daughter to be a safe driver, a thoughtful driver, and know that there are calculated risks out there. And that's the case with almost every situation we talk about. So that's what being an anxiety specialist is about. This episode with these tips is about teaching you, the parent, our mindset. We're not trying to hurt your child. We're not trying to terrify your child. We're not trying to overwhelm them with fear. Those are ineffective ways to learn how to battle fear. We're trying to teach everyone that you can do things that feel scary, that induce a sense of fear, and still be in control, confident, and by the way, it still might not work out.
In summary, do it scared. Just kidding.
No, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
As long as you're not danger, do it scared.
So in summary, thanks for joining us for this video. We hope you're beginning to see what our mindset is when we approach these situations and feeling more confident that you can face fear.
If you like this episode, like, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next episode. Welcome to Raising Resilience, 25 tips for parenting your child with anxiety and...
What are we doing? Okay.
Quiet on the set. Okay, so 3, 2. So Marti, we all heard that horn out there. We'll show a car on video in 3, 2. So let's start with tip number 6. I'm excited about this episode because this is really...